So I've got about 15 minutes to give you an overview of the work that we've been doing in Ballinderry Rivers Trust, and just to touch on how that fits with the wider network of rivers trusts across the UK and Ireland. But in this presentation, I'm going to focus on how we've been engaging landowners, particularly in the conservation of the freshwater pearl mussel, which is a globally endangered species. But just before we start, just a quick background as to who we are and what we do. Ballinderry Rivers Trust is a charity. It's concerned with the protection and conservation of water quality, species and habitats right across the Ballinderry River system, which you can see there in green, the western shore rivers and streams of Lough Neagh in light green, and then Lough Neagh itself in blue. And the rivers and streams that we look after fall to the west of Lough Neagh, but the entire catchment area, including the loch, is over 1,000 square kilometres of Northern Ireland. So the Ballinderry River is just one of only a handful of rivers that have designations in the Naban river system, and the upper part of the Ballinderry River is designated under European law as a special area of conservation, and under Northern Ireland legislation as an area of special scientific interest. And that designation is limited to the main channel of the upper part of the river above Cookstown. And it's designated because it is home to a population of freshwater pearl mussel, as well as otters and stream water crowfoot or ranunculus. And the entire river system, as I say, discharges to Lough Neagh, which is a special protection area and a Ramsar site. So there's lots of designations and layers of protection on the catchments that we're looking after. But needless to say, there's lots of issues that need to be resolved in order to protect these species and habitats to stop them going into further decline. Just by way of a potted history, the organisation started as a river association back in 1984. 4 angling clubs came together on the river to form what was then the River Enhancement Association, or BREA. And over time, it evolved into a charity. And also changed its name to Ballinderry Rivers Trust, because there was a growing movement in England particularly, where rivers trusts were forming, and we were very much a rivers trust, but we just felt that changing our name would help us to fit better with that particular movement. We're actually going through a rebranding exercise at the minute, so our logo is about to change as well. But the Ballinderry River, if you can see my cursor moving, hopefully, is sitting right in the middle of Northern Ireland. And you can see all around us, there's lots of other rivers trusts that are forming right across Northern Ireland and the rest of Ireland as well. And a lot of these trusts are relatively new. They've appeared in the last 10 years. And in fact, Alec Ralston mentioned ORCA, or the Oriel Catchment Association, which is formed is forming in the Dundalk Bay area. And that would fill this area here on the map. So the number of rivers trusts is growing steadily, and we all have similar charitable objectives to protect and enhance and improve the catchments that we're looking after, but also to educate the public on the importance of the freshwater environment. Now, the focus of the work at Ballinderry is to primarily look at water quality improvement. So we undertake a number of projects around water quality improvement and trying to achieve at least Water Framework Directive standards and targets for our water bodies. But it's also about protecting habitats and improving, and then sometimes creating or recreating habitats that have been removed and destroyed due to drainage works or modification to river channels. We also undertake projects to conserve freshwater species. So either this is out in the river environment itself, where we are improving the habitat and water quality, but in some cases we run breeding programs where we have to support the populations in our rivers. So we're currently running a breeding program, a long-running breeding program for freshwater pearl mussel, and also one for white-clawed crayfish. Historically, we ran trout and salmon breeding programs as well, but we don't do that anymore. We haven't done that for about 6 years now, because there's lots of science around breeding fish and putting them back in rivers that suggests that perhaps more harm could be done than good by breeding them and putting them into the river environment. Overarching everything we do is education and outreach work with our schools and our community groups, and some of that involves working with our local universities or universities further afield, in fact, to undertake research that helps us all better better understand the freshwater environment and how we interact with it. Everything we do is evidence-based, so we use the knowledge that exists within government organisations, other NGOs, and indeed in our local community to plan and undertake the projects that we deliver. It's also all catchment-based, so we look at everything we do from the perspective of the entire catchment, not just the site that we're working in. So we understand the interactions upstream, downstream, and both in terms of interactions between the land and the water environment. And also, although we are interested in that very large area in the middle of Northern Ireland, we don't own any of it. So all of the work that we do is in partnership with landowners, with government agencies, with local community groups, and it's only through partnership working that we can achieve what we do. Now, just to give you a bit of background to the pearl mussel itself, it is a globally endangered species. It's Ireland's most imperiled freshwater species. And it's on the IUCN Red List. It has a unique life cycle in that it depends on trout or salmon to survive. The adult mussel produces larvae that are spat out into the river water, and at that point they have to attach to the gills of a trout or a salmon. In the Ballinderry, it's trout that are preferred. Those larvae stay on the gills of the fish for 9 months before they fall off as small mussels, and they bury down into the gravel in the river. Now, they need very clean gravel in order to survive because the oxygenated water needs to reach them. Unfortunately, we see far too much soil and sediment escaping from the land into our watercourses, and this settles out on the river gravels, and it actually stops the oxygenated water reaching the juvenile mussels, and so they suffocate. And this has been going on for a long, long time now, where we haven't really had any natural recruitment of mussels in the Ballinderry population, probably for about 30 years. So we're seeing an aging population that's dying off. Current estimates are that if we do nothing to halt the decline of freshwater mussels in the Northern Ireland populations, there are left, and there are only 6 populations left, that they'll be extinct by 2097. So it's quite clear that we need human intervention to correct the issues that are impacting on these species and others in the freshwater environment. And of course, one of the key stakeholders here are landowners. Now, we've had to identify where the sediment is coming from. So working with the University of Ulster in this case, we have introduced to the river these time-integrated sediment samplers, which allow us to capture sediment that's moving down the river and then take it away and quantify it, and also look at what it's made of. So is it organic or is it mineral? And we're then able to take that information and fingerprint that back up the catchment, so we can identify some of our critical source areas for this silt or sediment that's entering the watercourses and impacting the environment and the quality of the river. And it's all about this simple model that you hear talked about a lot in catchment management, which is around the source, pathway, receptor model, where all pollutants have a source, they have a way of getting to the water environment, and then they impact on something, the receptor. So it's either the water quality, it's the habitat within the river, or it's the species in it. So a lot of the work we're doing is trying to identify the sources of where these issues are coming from. In this case, I'm showing an agricultural setting. It could just as easily be an urban setting or a mixed catchment landscape. But very often in a rural landscape, we're seeing poaching of the ground and disturbance of the ground and soil being left there for long periods of time, or it could be poor yard management in farms, or the fields getting trampled because of the livestock getting access to riverbanks and so on. So identifying the sources and then also identifying the pathways of how those pollutants are reaching the rivers enables us to start to plan for how we might address these problems. And a lot of it is about land management. It's about better understanding and working together to find simple solutions that are cost effective and repeatable, so that landowners particularly, who are often time poor and also working on very, very tight profit margins, can actually see a benefit themselves in doing this work, because there's a win-win situation, a positive that comes out for the water environment, but also a positive that arises for the farm business, be it a financial saving or making the farm business more sustainable or more profitable. So this particular project for the freshwater pearl mussel is focused on the upper part of the Ballinderry River. It's about 127 square kilometres, and if you remember from the previous image I showed, the designated stretch of the river is just the main channel down the centre of the catchment. So it's a relatively small area, it's about 58 hectares in total, because the SAC really only extends about 4 metres either side of the river channel itself. But there's 127 kilometres of catchment that can impact on that SAC. So we need to work in that area in order to bring about change. And we've used various techniques to do this. So we've used computer models, in this case, SciMap, which is open source computer model. It's available online, and it uses land use data, slope data and rainfall data to work out where your land use types are most vulnerable to erosion, or soil types are most vulnerable, where they're on steep slopes and where there is a lot of rainfall. And if you have those three things in combination, you're likely to have a runoff of sediment from the land to the water. And you can just about see in this image red areas, and the redder the areas are, the more likely erosion is to take place. So by using open source computer models like this and open source data to run them, we've been able to target our work in the catchment to reduce the amount of soil loss from the land. And we can actually drill down into this detail to a field level, so we can have a discussion with the landowner about how soil is maybe being lost from the land, what that means for the farm business, but what it also means for the water environment. And very often when the farmers see these maps, they'll agree that these red areas are probably indicating steeper slopes in the fields, and where they've seen soil getting washed off, or where there's rills appeared in the soil as the rain has moved through the landscape. We've also been doing walkover surveys, identifying open livestock drinking points where cattle are accessing the water freely for drinking water, but also causing soil erosion and bank destabilisation. And in the target area, there were 64 open livestock watering points in our initial walkover survey. Also stretches of river where the riverbanks are unfenced, so cattle are trampling the banks and causing bank failures. And there were 24 kilometres of unfenced riverbanks in our target area. And also eroding bends and bank failures caused by river modification and rivers being forced into shapes that they don't want to flow in. And this causes erosion points and bank failures. And although it looks relatively insignificant on that map there are actually 68 of them that total 3.5 kilometres of bank failures. So we worked in this area with 72 landowners. There were actually 74 landowners in the stretches that we were working in. 2 of them didn't want to work with us or were unable to work with us, but 72 did. So it was a massive uptake. And we were able to install 24 kilometres of stock-proof fencing. We addressed the bank's destabilisation areas and planted over 3,000 native willow trees. And where we closed up the open livestock watering points, we installed pasture pumps that are cattle operated, so the farmer can or the cattle can still access drinking water from the rivers without the farmer incurring water charges. So again, there's a win-win there for both the river and the farmer. We were offering 100% funding in this project, so it's probably not surprising the farmers took it up. And we invested £180,000 worth of measures on the ground. But although it was 100% funded, £20,000 worth of work actually came from the landowners, where they allowed us to use their machinery, or they moved materials for us, and they actually helped us install some of the fencing. So that was money saved in the project that we would otherwise have had to have paid out. So there was a significant contribution from landowners, even though they didn't have to make it, which to me shows the investment that farmers are willing to make in environmental improvement, especially when they see the win-win for both themselves and the river. So here you can see an example of an open livestock watering point. There's severe poaching and land loss in terms of the soil that's washed down the river. and just downstream of this point, a colony of freshwater pearl mussel that are being impacted. This was the before, and this is the after. So the area where the open livestock watering point had been was backfilled, fence was put up, and a pasture pump installed. So now this source of sediment has been stopped in this particular stretch of river, and this was repeated again and again down the river. These pasture pumps are relatively cheap to buy. They're about £250, and they're also very easy to install. So they prove very popular with the landowners. Every farm business is different. So when we talk to farmers, we want to understand their farm business. We want to understand their aspirations for their farm. And so, one fence doesn't fit all. So we've had to look at what fencing is required for different farm businesses at different places on the river. And here you can see where cattle have been accessing the riverbanks and causing massive erosion on both sides of the river. We used stone that was actually in the fields already and fencing to reinstate the riverbank. So this is looking from the other side of the river. Put up the fence to stop cattle re-entering the watercourse, and planted willow all along this stretch. And although I don't have the photo in here, unfortunately, this site has now matured somewhat. The willow trees have grown, so there's now dappled light and shade for trout and salmon in here, as well as reduction in the amount of sediment that's reaching this watercourse. The other added advantage of doing this work is that it actually helps improve cattle health, because there's less chance that TB or other diseases can be spread from one herd to another when the cattle are kept separate in the fields. We've also used soft engineering. Here you can see the tops of conifer trees from nearby Dava forest that have been pegged into the riverbank. These act like very big brushes that slow the water down and actually collect silt. So these riverbanks now have actually built up again. The silt has been deposited on top of the conifer trees, and these banks have not only stabilized but actually reinstated themselves, and lots of new habitat has been created for young trout and salmon in these tributaries. The end result of all this work is that, we now have about 3,000 less cattle standing in the river than there was when we started the project. So that's a significant reduction, not just in the amount of sediment getting into the watercourses, but also the amount of fecal matter, because it's been proven scientifically that cattle are more likely to pee and poo when they're standing in the water than when they're out in the river. And so, there's lots of other impacts that are being avoided because these animals are not standing in the water anymore. We do something called redox assessment, which essentially measures how freely the oxygenated water can move through the gravel. And we saw a 15% improvement in the substrate quality after just 1 year following all of these works being introduced. So the natural flooding cycle in the river turned over gravel, it released the silt that had built up, and subsequently, as the years have gone, it's continued to release sediment out of the gravel and move it on out of the river system, slowly cleaning the substrate and improving it as time goes on. We've kind of moved on with our thinking now in this, that work focused very, very much on the riverbanks themselves. We're now looking at the wider catchment landscape. We're looking at a whole farm approach. And this work's inspired by work that's been done by West Country Rivers Trust over the last kind of 15 years in their upstream thinking project, and has recently been adopted by the Source to Tap project, which is a cross-border EU project. And we're using it here in the Ballinderry as well, where we look at whole farm plans. So look at the whole farm business, the yard, the fields, the lanes, all of the infrastructure that makes up the farm. And we are currently producing 120 whole farm plans for the Upper Ballinderry River SAC, with the target of bringing in at least 40% of the designated site into favourable conservation management. Now, there is a slight distinction there between conservation management and conservation status. We hope in the future, of course, to improve the status, but we at least first need to bring it under favourable conservation management, and that's what these plans aim to do. We have 2 full-time farm advisors who work on the project, and they're out offering yard management advice, soil management advice, including looking at compaction in fields by digging test pits, and also doing soil testing to give the farmers the information they need on their nutrient management in their fields. We're looking at pesticide storage, handling and usage on the farm, clean and dirty water separation, both in the farmyards and in the fields, and also the impact of atmospheric pollution, where increasingly we see the issue of ammonia escaping from intensive livestock units, impacting on nearby bogland and aquatic environments as the ammonia nitrifies when it enters the water environment. Part of what we're doing is also looking at rush control. Rushes are a big problem. They're normally treated by chemicals, and we are producing rush management plans for farmers to try and reduce the amount of MCPA that might escape from the water environment into the, from the field environment into the water environment. It's all about highlighting those win-win solutions, and I keep saying this because we believe it's very important. Sometimes you go onto a farm and you don't have a conversation about the environment at all. You have a conversation about the farm business, about how farming's going, about the sustainability of the family business, who's going to take it over. And all of these things are what are important to the farmer. And then we talk about the environment in which all of that depends. And that's where we identify the win-win that can work for both the river and the farm business. So by walking the farms, using a special mobile app that we've built in ArcGIS, we're able to collect information about the farm business and then interrogate this further when we get back to the office. So we can click on any one of our points and identify what we saw in the field. So in this case, it's a livestock access issue along the river, and pull up a photo of that particular site so we can see the problem. And this helps us to write the reports that we send back to the landowners. Similarly, in the yard, we could have a yard water issue where there are spoutings missing from the farmyard buildings. And again, this is something that can be easily addressed. In order to address all of these problems, we've designed our own AgriEnvironment Scheme. We call it the Water Friendly Farming Scheme. There are 9 key themes within our Ballinderry scheme. First of all, understanding what can be done. So that's about farm planning. But then looking at measures around livestock exclusion, soil management, slowing the flow of water over the land, clean and dirty water separation, pesticide handling, ammonia reduction, and also climate adaptation and flood reduction measures, where we've identified where a farm could actually help reduce the flooding problem in the river, maybe using natural flood management measures. And also, finally, a kind of a bespoke measure, or a measure that's created between the farmer and the farm advisor that suits that farm particularly well. And as long as we can fund it, we will. So they get a farm visit, we produce a farm plan, they apply for funding to the trust, we offer them the funding based on quotes they provide to us, they undertake the work on the ground, we inspect the works, they claim the grant back, and then they maintain the features that we've installed or they've installed for 10 years. So there's a 10-year management agreement that accompanies our measures that we're funding on our farms. The end result of all of this is that we are now in a position to release freshwater mussels back to the wild. In a survey undertaken about 4 or 5 years ago, we identified there was about 1,500 freshwater mussels left in the Ballinderry River. We've now released over 2,500 freshwater mussels back. So we've more than doubled the population. And it's down to the work that the farmers have been doing that's enabled us to do this, and the partnership that we've formed with the farming community. And it means instead of all the bad news stories we see in the press, we see good news stories like this, landowners helping to protect endangered species, and also being able to celebrate that by showcasing the work we've been doing with landowners on programs such as Countryfire. Finally, we have now started to link our farmers into the UK Farmer Group Discussion Network. This is a network that's been established by Exeter University, and Ballinderry Rivers Trust has become the Northern Ireland lead for this in Northern Ireland now, trying to link farmers groups into this wider network. It means that the work that our farmers are doing can contribute to the national discussion and debate around what we need to do to make farming more sustainable and also help to improve the environment. And those two things go hand in hand. So hopefully that's given you a flavour of the work that we're doing, and maybe inspired you on your thinking of how you can engage people in catchment management and find those win-wins that work for everyone. Thank you very much.